So do you support universal access membership?
Yes, I do.
And why?
Well, essentially because I think that with students paying money for the SSAAF, then I think that the best way for that to be directed would be towards universal access, because it means that more students would be getting involved in all the great things that the union offers. There'd be greater engagement and awareness. And yeah, so I definitely support universal access. I think it would be great if we could get that implemented.
Cool. Second question, do you support affirmative action? Why or why not?
I think from what I have heard that affirmative action is going under review. I think potentially Bridget Dixon will be heading a review of it. And so I think that I'd be on board with the review, I guess, because we have to discern whether... I know affirmative action was put in at a time when it was definitely necessary, but now I think, you know, there's a lot of very strong female candidates, especially in this race. And I think that it's something that I just need to think about and, like, research more into whether it is necessary. So, yeah.
I think part of the inquiry as well, I mean, this is, like, not... I haven't really looked into this, but when I was speaking to it at Women's Night with Bridget last year, was that they were considering changing the clause to read, you know, that it must contain X number of either gender on board, like, was one of the potential things. I don't know anything more.
Yeah, well, I guess the thing with affirmative action is, like, on one sense, it is good in that, you know, it means there is equal representation on board, but I also think that there have been instances where girls, like, people assume there's two different races, and I think that is bad. They think, oh, you know, I'm not going to vote for this girl because she's got affirmative action and it's fine. And that's quite detrimental to girls. So I really think that's sort of the consideration you think about with affirmative action, whether it's relevant, whether it is actually benefiting females. So yeah, that's what I think.
Definitely.
All right, double-barrel question. What is your attitude to fair trade, and have you signed the Fairly Educated Fair Trade contract?
I personally, like, individually support fair trade. I think that it is something that a lot of students want. Like, as at the fair trade referendum, 89.3% of students voted yes.
Just to clarify, sorry, just quickly. When you say, like, fair trade certifies fair trade, or a socially responsible, like, distributors, obviously, like,
there is a difference.
There's a debate over whether or not that certification is valid.
Look, I mean, for me personally, I think the fair trade certification is a great way in which students are able to easily identify they've got fair trade. You know, it's a movement around universities all over the world for it. I think, you know, I support that. But I also understand that I have met with the fairly educated people. We discussed the contract, you know, what their interests were. I haven't signed the contract because I think that I'm just a candidate. I'm not on the board yet. There are a lot of other considerations that board directors have to make, like, because they're representing the union. And so I think it's, I wouldn't be comfortable with signing a contract unless I knew that I could 100% deliver that on board. And because I don't have all the information, I couldn't sign the contract. So, even though I do support fair trade, I just couldn't make that commitment based on information I don't really have yet.
Cool. This is sort of a double-barrel question as well. Are you a member of any political party? So firstly, and regardless of that, what do you see as the role of political parties in elections as it stands and on board, and do you see it as a good or bad thing? Or you could be more moderate than that as well.
Yeah, no, that's okay. No, I'm not a member of any political party. I don't know, I do find that the idea of political parties, you know, running people and supporting particular candidates quite interesting. I think that being a board director doesn't necessarily, it's not a political thing per se. It's about, you know, you as an individual, your values, how you feel about the organisation and your skills in representing the, you know, the student population as a director. I don't think it should be a huge deal when electing a candidate. Purely because when you're on board, it's not so much about your political affiliation, it's more about, you know, your personal decisions that you make and the collective decisions that the board makes in the interest of, you know, both the students and the organisation and your own personal values. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
So if that's the case, do you think that, as it stands now, that political parties have kind of too much influence over the outcome of board elections? Just in terms of the candidates that they would propose and the resources that they can put behind them?
Well, for me personally, I mean, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I know that some candidates are, you know, supported by different political parties or are being backed. I mean, I'm not. And I think I'm just getting my friends to help me and, you know, using the resources that I have. So I don't think that I'm at a disadvantage necessarily. I don't think I am at all.
Cool.
But are you being run by any current board member, or are they helping you out specifically in your campaign?
I'm not technically being run by anybody. I guess I'm just really fortunate that I have some friends who are like quite involved in campaigns and things. Like Reese is helping me because he's been friends with me for like 3 years, and he ran a really successful campaign last year. And he's offered help me out with all these things that like I would have no clue what to do because I really haven't had that much campaign experience at all. And so I'm just really fortunate I've got that sort of help from him.
To the same extent, like in terms of political parties, political backing, like I know you're running as an independent. Obviously you mentioned that Reese is helping you but is not managing you, like not in those words. Do you think, like, do you see a difference at the moment in the distinction between, I don't know, like this is like an arbitrary one, but like what we sort of are terming at the moment as small I and large I independents, in terms of the independents being larger independents that are associated with, for example, the campaign that Reese ran at the end of last year, which you mentioned was wildly successful. It was also a campaign which conferred on a campaign you were running certain benefits, and now he is running you again. Like, that's not only limited to you, and I don't know if you identify with being part of that, but like other candidates such as perhaps Karen as well could be seen as being independents associated with that specific independent group, whereas someone like Sophie, independent, is not associated with that independent group. What do you think about that as a faction or whatever?
Yeah, no, I do know what you mean. Like, it's just... No, I know what you're trying to say, but from my perspective, it's literally just like Reese is someone who I've known since like 2009, 2010, and I met him through someone who's completely not politically aligned at all. And he knew that I was, interested in the whole getting more involved thing, and he seemed like someone who was involved. So that's like where our relationship came from. So I guess for me, that's all I can say personally, because that's how my relationship with Reese is formed. And so like I don't think I'm like buying into any sort of faction. I'm really just like getting help from a friend.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
No, we're just
just to ask you. Do you see that movement as existing though? Like maybe if not personally part of it, like on campus more generally.
I mean, the way I see it, it's like a friends thing. It's just people who are friends with each other. I think that's how a lot of these things form, I guess. Like, when I was running for Banter for Honi, we all became friends through that, but I wouldn't say we're like a faction, I guess. It's just like you meet people on the campaign trail, you get along really well with them, you all enjoy being involved and, bettering student life and that sort of thing, and that's where it goes to from there.
Cool. Okay. So, why do you think there are so few candidates this year, and do you think this is good or a bad thing?
That's a good question. I'm not sure why there are so few candidates. I guess, like, board is a big commitment, and I think it's good, I guess, that all the people who are running have thought through that very carefully, and all the people who are running, like, 100% committed to, making a really good, like, fleshed out campaign, having lots of policies and really doing this, like, giving it their all. I think it's good that there are less in one respect, because it means that all of us will be forced to, because there's less of us, people will be watching us closer, and therefore we'll have to have really, good policy ideas, or really, like, thoroughly understand us and relate to us, which I think is good, because it'll help them to make a more informed decision on who they're voting for. I guess it's bad in an extent to that if there were more people running, there'd be more ideas, there'd be more opportunities, and, there'd be more, fresh ideas going into what people think the union could be, and they'd be able to identify with those other people. But the way it stands now, like, I think the race is really competitive, and I reckon, it's going to be really exciting.
Cool. How do you view the negotiations that took place with the university over the past 2 years? So not SSAAF, like just general commercial operations negotiations.
Yeah, I actually think the outcome of it, well, I think that was really good. Like, I was actually talking to my friend at the University of New South Wales, and they had, their ARC kind of had a similar sort of negotiation system in which they, I think, sold some of their commercial operations to the university in order for, like, free access in their sort of university union. And I think that they seem to think that although that is in the short run good, because it means that everyone has free, access, the union's free for all, that it's bad and that there would be less bargaining power later on. Like, we have let go of some of our commercial operations, and that would make the union at a weaker position via the university if it ever got to, like, a tough negotiating position. So I think the decision, the way that it worked out for us, that we are still in control of our commercial operations, is really good. It's, like, strong for the union. So I'm really happy with that. So
following that mentioning of negotiations, personally, do you think you are a good negotiator and would make a good negotiator on board in those sort of circumstances?
Yeah.
And why?
Well, I guess to be a good negotiator, you have to be able to listen to the other perspective, and to not be too like aggressive in the way you act. I don't think I'm like a really aggressive person. Just in the way I relate to people, I like to think that like I don't come on like really strong, and you know, I like to think it's like a give take sort of situation where you're listening to them, and you're both working together towards an outcome that you know is you know hopefully mutually beneficial. So yeah, I'd like to think I would be a good negotiator on board.
Cool. So what do you think of the kind of allocation of SSAAF funding to the different student organisations? Do you think that it was a good allocation, a bad allocation? What's your view on it? Or somewhere in between?
Yeah, well, I know that in the survey there were all those different options, and like clubs and societies, facilities, you know, sport. I know the Sydney University Sport and Fitness got a lot of the allocation. But I think that, I mean, obviously, from my perspective, I think the union is the most important thing to my university experience, and I think it has so much potential to enrich like students' lives in so many different ways. So obviously, I'd like the union to get more SSAAF allocation, because I think we could do a lot with it that would benefit students in like a large variety of ways.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Okay.
What ideas do you have as a candidate to make the union's commercial operations a more successful and profitable venture?
Well, I guess like it could, as in, would you mean like all of the like on-campus outlets that are owned by the?
Yeah.
Sure. Just any specific policies you have, or vision even for things that we can do to ensure that the union becomes, you know, remains commercially viable and sustainable.
Well, I don't have any sort of like specific policies in my policy ideas for it. But I guess that like encouraging students to consume food that is owned by the union. I suppose you could do that through just like marketing. You could do more marketing and promotion of the things that are owned by the union, because I don't think a lot of students know exactly which organisations on campus are union, like not organisations, which food outlets on campus are union owned and which aren't. Like some people think Taste is owned by the union. You know, in Manning there aren't really that many things that are owned by the union out of the food outlets there. I think really like telling students these are the things that are owned by the union. It's really important you to purchase food there because you're giving back into this organisation that's given heaps to you. So I reckon just like lots of publicity on that to like get students aware of what is owned by the union, and you know that it will be a really good idea to invest their money in that way.
Sure. What was I going to say? Further to that point, this is actually more broad, but what do you see as the purpose of the USU, or what has USU done for you?
Wow, USU's done a lot for me. Like, I could actually say that without the USU, I probably wouldn't have a lot of my friends, like, a lot of my social life, a lot of my career prospects. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, all the things that I've ever been involved in the USU have just rewarded me so much. Like, I've gotten heaps of skills. Like, when would I ever be able to, like, bring a dunk tank to campus? Or when I'd be able to organise a camp? Or, like, you know, organise speakers forums. It's just so many cool opportunities. You literally, like, be on radio. I could never have done that without USU. Like, all the things that have actually been my favourite memories of my time at this university have been from the union. So it's not only just, like, the parties, so I guess like the celebration aspect and all the social life, but I've like learned a lot of valuable skills, made a lot of friends, you know, heaps of things that I just think are really important to my own like personal development and my university experience.
When did you decide to run for union?
I've wanted to be on board for a long time. Like I've always thought it was like something that I've wanted, but I really was interested in it around 2010. And then I went on exchange, and a lot of other things happened, and I finished my undergrad degree, and I had no idea what I was going to be doing this year. So I think, like, I've been kind of tossing up about it this year, like, January, February, but then I really decided I was going to give it a go in about, February, March. I'm not sure, like, it was kind of something that I was just thinking about and weighing up all of the different considerations, but,
Cool. So why do you think you're qualified to be a board member?
A director.
Oh, director.
Well, okay. I guess I bring quite a few things. Number one, I'm just really enthusiastic about it. Like, I get ridiculously excited, as you can probably tell right now. I'm speaking really quickly, talking about the union. I'm also nervous. But, yeah, like that, I have a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Also, like, I've been quite involved in union things in the past. Like, I understand how the organisation works, from, like, being campus culture director, socials director of SAS, president of International and Global Studies Society, and I even know, like, because my friend and I started International and Global Studies Society from scratch, so we sort of know, like, how to create a club and learn, like, quite a bit about the inner workings of CNS program and all that sort of thing. So I guess in terms of, I have a lot of experience. But then I also think, just as importantly, in all of the positions that I've held at this university, I've tried to be really creative and, like, think outside the box and be innovative and not just be, like, competently performing the role, but looking for ways to, like, enhance the role and get more out of it. And so I guess if I was a board director, like, I wouldn't just be one of those board directors that, you know, just reads the papers, rocks up to the meetings, like, you know, does the bare minimum, because it's, like, such a big opportunity. Why would you not want to make the most of it? And, like, you know, as you learn more about the organisation, just think of new ways and, like, innovative ways in which you could, you know, make the union better for students, like, allow it to give more to students. So yeah, I think I'd definitely be just, like, really enthusiastic and creative and innovative, and yeah, those are the things that I reckon I could bring to board.
Which current member of the board do you admire the most, and why?
You know, I really admire Sabella, actually. I've known Sabella since I was in year 7. She was in year 8 at North Sydney Girls. She was, like, SRC vice president of my school captain of my school, and now she's president of the union. And, like, I've sort of really admired her over a long period of time, just because she's just so, like, calm, level-headed. Like, she's had to deal with all of this negotiations. Like, she had a really tough term as president, and she just managed it with so much dignity, and always just, you know, has done a really good job, and doesn't really, like, she's kind of behind the scenes as well, in that she's not always, like, you know, huge and loud on campus, like a big presence, but she's just quietly, like, competently doing, you know, her job and doing it really, really well. And all the board directors really admire and respect her, and all the staff really admire her too. So if I was on board, I would definitely love to be like Sabella.
Yeah. Further to that point, we've asked other questions as well. Like, I mean, you mentioned that you went to the same school as Sabella. This isn't completely off that, but, like, certain school, like, not like we've already acknowledged that certain political factions have quite a lot of sway on board, and also, like, you know, independent groupings of friends, or however you want to say that. Further to the point, like, do you think it's a problem that specific schools, like perhaps your own school or Riverview, as well as specific groups, like I know we spoke to Karen about her involvement with Anya, and Sabella's involvement with Anya, and other prospective board directors.
No, that's interesting.
Do you think that shows some sort of, like given that there are some very high patterns also with college candidates, which we mentioned as well to Nick, do you think that this shows that people are being blocked out from board, or not necessarily blocked out, but certain groups find it easier perhaps to get on board because of the patronage networks which they inherited by whatever reason?
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that much. Well, I guess with school, the school thing is kind of natural in that you probably know the people who are in the grades below you in school and the grades above you, and so if you were interested in going onto board and you knew someone from your school was on board, that's like a natural connection, and they'd be inclined to help you out because they know you too. But in terms of blocking people off,
not blocking people off, I think it's more
passively,
denying,
because
denying
people feel
the
like they
opportunity.
can't get on board because they don't know this certain set of people. Well, I don't know, like, I always think about Asta's story, which I'm sure you guys already know, in that she literally just saw the ad and was like, oh, board directors meeting, okay, this is a job interview. So she, like, rocked up and thought it would be a job interview, and she didn't really know anything or anybody, and then she just, you know, heard that Ben Tang was a board director, so she just Facebook messaged him out of the blue.
Even still, like, you could hardly say that Pimple was in their school, which is that's went to Pimple, right?
No, she went to North Sydney.
Did she go
she went to North Sydney Girls,
North Sydney Girls. No, she did. My bad.
Yeah.
She's still part of that network to an extent, but, like, obviously.
But I mean, like, the way, I guess
there's a difference.
Yeah, there is, insofar as, like, if you are a person who wants to get more involved, like, the union board elections are definitely publicised, and I think people with that inclination, like, you don't necessarily need to know someone in the way that didn't know anybody to, you know, just run a campaign and get on board. So I really think that, like, there are, like, obviously I'm sure there could be ways in which that I mean, I guess the board elections could be publicised more, or I mean, not even, like, they're very well publicised. Like, I think that if you want to get involved, you'll be able to get involved. Like, I don't think there's any people feel necessarily overly intimidated by the fact that there's like some network or something. I reckon if you really wanted to, you'd do it anyway.
But it's still harder because you don't already know people. Like I acknowledge that they're not blocked off and they could do it on their own back, but like you could.
I mean, it's harder. Yeah, it's harder to run, I guess, because there's a lot of logistic things like A-frames and chalking and all these things that you just don't have knowledge of if you don't know anything about it. I mean, you've got to start somewhere. Like,
of course.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. So, which of the other candidates do you think would make the best board director, and why?
Well, I think all of the candidates, like, they bring different strengths. It's definitely, I don't know them all. I don't know all of them that well. Yeah. But I definitely think that everyone has a different set of strengths. Yeah. The one that I do know, I guess, the closest would be Karen. And she's just highly competent and has a lot of institutional knowledge about the union. And so I guess that, I think that she would be a great board director. Yeah,
totally.
Final question in this part before we ask you some specific questions.
Okay.
Cool. There's only a few. If you are elected, who will you vote for president of the union?
Okay. Oh yeah. I'll be honest about that. Well, at the moment, obviously, I don't even know if I'm elected to board. I don't even know who's going to be throwing their hat in the ring. But I mean, obviously, everyone has an idea. And at the moment, I would say that I would vote for Reece for president if he decided to put his hat in, because, like I said before, we've been friends for ages and I greatly admire him. I think he's been a great treasurer. I have a lot of respect for him. But even also, like, if you've ever had a conversation with Reece, he lives and breathes the union. He talks about it all the time. And I think if Reece was union board president, he would actually give his everything to it. And I think that's a massive, plus in favour of him. I think he'd be a great president if he gave his 100% into it, which I'm assured that he would. So I guess at the moment, honestly, if you ask me, I would say if Reece threw his hat into the ring, I would vote for him.
I think that's really refreshing. No other candidate has been honest about who they were going to vote for. They said they haven't thought about it. So,
So that's very... Thank you. So you said earlier... Well, and as we know, your campus...
And obviously, you weren't confirming that you would definitely...
Yeah. Like, we're not...
Being honest. Oh, that's okay.
The idea.
It's just so full on.
So, you were campus culture director.
Yeah.
You are no longer, though.
No, I'm not.
What happened?
Well, okay, no, this is a really fair question. I do want to be honest about this as well. When I was applying for campus culture director, I was doing it because I just wanted to get more involved in the union. It looked like a really fun job. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to give this one a go. It's a 1 year long position. Yeah. I intend to be at Sydney. Like, I wasn't really sure what degree I was going to do either. Like, I wanted to do JD. I wasn't sure whether I'd get in. I thought I was going to do like a 1 year master's program. So I was like, you know what? Campus culture, that looks like a lot of fun. I'll do it. At the time, like I'd said to you before, I thought my time for board had sort of passed. Like, there's that idea, like, when you're younger and you're an undergrad, like, that's the best time to run. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a postgrad. Like, it's done. My time's passed. And then I guess through being campus culture director and learning more about the union in that role and also understanding more what board directors do and how they influence the union and, like, the programs department and all that sort of thing, I kind of actually grew to realise that this would probably be the only year where I would have enough time and energy and support to actually run for board. And so I did have to think, how would my skills best benefit the union? I came down to realise that I think as a board director I could benefit the union more through my energy and skills and time and effort than I would as campus culture director. But of course you can't be campus culture director and a board director, because it would mean that if I was a board director I'd be the boss of my boss as campus culture. Like, you can't do that. And I talked to Al Cowie about that and Isabella as well, and they advised me to resign from the position of campus culture before putting in my nomination. So that's what I did.
That's what you did. Do you think it's negligible that you still list on your official CV that you are campus culture director for 2012, despite the fact that you have since quit the position?
Well, I was campus culture director for 2012. Like, it's a fact. I mean, I could say since resigned. I don't know, I didn't really think about that. Like, I mean, I have resigned. And I was campus culture director at the time. So, I mean, I was just sort of stating the truth, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So just about some more of your policies.
Yeah, sure.
You have a policy about delivering, like, USU short courses to students. Firstly, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I just think that, well, I was actually talking to Al Cowie and Andrew Woodward about this, and before VSU, Sydney University the union used to provide short courses in barista training, RSA, first aid, all that sort of things, and then they took it away. And I was thinking about that, and I think that's something really valuable that students could benefit a lot from, because, a lot of people do want to learn these sort of skills, but they're all, a variety of different places to get them, and I think it would be great if they were centralised in the union, and the union provided all these, and we'd be able to, hopefully, keep the costs low while keeping the quality high, because, the union's in a unique position to benefit students' interests, above other, commercial concerns at times. So I just think that the short courses program, and it also would, often the union is kind of the social, cultural aspect, and then the university is the academic part. So I think it would be a nice way to sort of make the union a bit more, career focused, and it would give you an edge in your job applications if you had, an Adobe Photoshop skills, or if you had a first aid, certificate, or an RSA, it would just benefit you as you go out into the workforce, even getting casual jobs or in your career. I just think it's something that, we used to have, and I'd like to bring it back.
Cool. You mentioned, though, that was in existence before VSU.
Yeah.
Given that VSU is obviously still repealed, do you think it is financially possible to bring it back? Have you investigated that in your discussions?
No, I absolutely have. When I obviously have talked to when I had this big extensive chat to Andrew Woodward about it all, and what I learnt was that the university, because we thought we weren't going to get any funding from, the union, because we thought we weren't going to get any funding from SSAAF, obviously did a lot of, cost cutting, budgeting, and was able to, budgeted for 2012 to run at a $850,000 deficit. And then with SSAAF, when we got the $3.184 million from SSAAF, it meant that we had about a $2.2 million operating surplus. And so Andrew Woodward said that although some of that money had to go into, it was channeled into necessary programs and operations of the USU, we do have about $1.6 million yet, which the union can decide what to do with. So we're actually in a really quite an exciting financial stage in the union in that we have this money which we didn't expect to have, and it's something that we can decide as a board. If I got on board, I assume I'd be deciding what to do with where the money goes. And so that's why all my ideas are really sort of creative, new, engaging ideas, because I do feel we are in a really exciting situation of the board's life.
Cool.
Totally.
Final question. It's about your proposal for a national CNS conference. Obviously that is quite firstly the University of Sydney Union has by far the most extensive CNS program. Secondly, it would be something which would be incredibly difficult to orchestrate. Would you see that as your role as a board director in Sydney Uni hosting it for the rest of the different societies? And do you think it actually is a logistically realistic and possible goal?
I do. I do. I love all of my policies, and this one I actually have a special fondness towards, just because. So, is it okay if I talk for ages about this? Because I really like it. Okay, so, well, essentially, and it may not be even the most popular one, but the CNS program, I think, is one of my favourite things about this university. It's given me heaps. It gives a whole lot of students a great opportunity to learn new skills and to also make new friends, do all that sort of thing. And I do think that there is no conference on a clubs and societies level yet which allows us to engage with other unions. I do know that Sydney University does have the best, but I do think we sort of operate in a vacuum as well, in the knowledge that we have the most extensive best programs, so we don't really need to learn from anyone else. But I think that it would just be so beneficial for, especially on a clubs and societies level, because anything they learn at the conference, the execs can just take back and, bring straight back into the students on that grassroots level. Because I know there's, managerial conferences for, directors and, the management, but that kind of would trickle down over, quite a few people. But at CNS, if the president went to a conference, came back, they'd be able to implement that straight away, and it would affect people straight away. For example, Annie Wiley, who's the president of radio, she said that she'd love to see, how the Radio Society in Monash works, right? Yeah. Because, with radio, with something, student radio in particular, it's such a niche market, it would be great to learn, what they're doing and how you could learn from that. Yeah. Also, UNSW has a really excellent O-Week volunteers program. The structure of their program, it's really efficient and really good, and I think that's something that we could also learn from. There's a whole variety of ways in which we can learn from other people's club and societies programs. So essentially, this is a policy that I really like I really want, because I know it's ambitious, I wanted to make sure that it was viable. When I talked to Al Cowie about it, he suggested the best way to go about it, if I wanted to, was to see if we could get sponsorship from TAG, which is a tertiary access group, and they're really interested in sponsoring this sort of thing because they're really, you know, they're supportive of student development, university student development, and they also are able to, like, influence, like, not influence, but they oversee, like, a wide variety of student universities all over Australia. And so if the union pitched the idea to TAG, and then they thought it was a good idea and wanted to get on board and sponsor it, then they'd be able to help find, you know, corporate sponsors who'd be able to, you know, fund the event, because obviously unions wouldn't have the money to fund it, and then through TAG we'd be able to kind of go from there. And I understand it is really ambitious, but I figure that even if it doesn't happen on my time on board, like, even if it happened like 5 years down the track and I was, you know, well gone, like, that doesn't matter, because I think it's just so beneficial for, like, clubs and societies execs to be engaging with each other. And Andrew Woodward was saying he's got his own like board directors, CEOs one that he goes to, and he finds it so incredibly beneficial. And like he says, he learns heaps from it, you know, and he gets a lot out of it. And so I think that's something that doesn't exist at the clubs and societies level, which I value a lot. So I thought, why not try for it? I think it could impact students in such a great way, you know, to be able to learn from other universities. And so that's why, I really like think this is a good policy.
Well, it's really good to hear that you've extensively like thought through the policies.
Sorry I talked for so long about it.
I really love
Believe me, it's
it's
really
good.
nice to hear.
So thanks for speaking.
Is that it?